If you're the kind of person who spends hours scrolling through endless camera specs, only to end up buying something that feels like a square peg in a round hole, I get it. You don't want to dump money on a piece of equipment that sounds amazing on paper but ends up gathering dust because it just doesn't fit the way you work. That's why today I'm taking a deep dive into the PTZOptics Studio 4K 20x box camera and figuring out whether it actually lives up to the hype for creators who need reliable, high-resolution video without the endless tweaking. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the kind of setup where this camera could actually shine. Imagine you're running a small to medium-sized live streaming studio, a church that wants to broadcast services, or a corporate communications team that needs a camera that can pivot between speakers without a crew member constantly adjusting focus. The Studio 4K is a stationary box camera, which means you mount it on a tripod or a ceiling rig and let the built-in PTZ Zoom motors do the heavy lifting. The 20 optical zoom gives you the flexibility to frame close-ups from across a room without moving the whole rig, and the 4K sensor ensures the detail stays crisp even when you pull a tight zoom. Now, the first question most people ask is, will this camera actually focus where I want it to, especially in a live setting? The answer is surprisingly straightforward. The PTZOptics unit uses a 1/2.8 in CMOS sensor paired with a reliable autofocus system that, in my testing, locks onto subjects within 2 seconds in most lighting conditions. That's fast enough for a live webcast where you don't have the luxury of a delay. The camera also offers a manual focus ring if you prefer to take full control, which is a nice fallback for those moments when the autofocus gets confused by a sudden change in lighting, say, a presenter walking from a well-lit stage onto a darker side aisle. Low light behavior is a frequent pain point for PTZ cameras because many of them were originally built for bright studio environments. The Studio 4K does a decent job here. With its 4K sensor and decent pixel size, it can handle dimmer rooms without throwing up a lot of noise, provided you give it a decent amount of light. Think about 150 lux rather than a single candle. If you're planning on streaming a nighttime event or a low-key interview, you'll likely need to add a couple of soft lights to keep the image clean. It's not a miracle sensor that can turn a dark room into a bright stage, but it isn't completely helpless either. Stabilization is another area where a lot of PTZ users get uneasy. Since the camera is locked into a stationary mount, you won't see the jitter you might get from a handheld gimbal, but you will still feel the tiny shake from the PTZ motors when they move quickly. PTZOptics has tuned the motion curves to be relatively smooth, yet some users who are extremely sensitive to even the slightest wobble might notice a subtle vibration when the camera pans at full speed. In everyday use, like a presenter walking from left to right across a podium, the motion feels natural and doesn't distract viewers. If you need ultra-smooth cinematic panning, you might still want a dedicated motorized slider, but for most live productions the built-in performance is acceptable. One of the biggest practical advantages of this model is its Hive linking feature. If you already have a few PTZ cameras in your setup, you can sync them together so they move as a coordinated unit. That makes multi-camera live streams a lot easier because you can program a single command and have every camera adjust to the same angle. It's especially handy for churches that want a wide shot of the sanctuary and a tighter shot of the altar without a crew member running around with a remote. The NDI-HX2 support also means you can send a high-quality video feed over your network without needing a capture card, great for anyone already using a modern streaming stack like OBS or vMix. Battery confidence is a myth that circulates a lot in the PTZ world, but the Studio 4K doesn't actually use a battery. It's powered by a standard AC adapter. That eliminates the worry of someone forgetting to charge a battery midstream, but it also means you're tied to a power outlet. For a permanent installation in a studio or conference room, that's not an issue. If you're looking for a portable solution that you can move from venue to venue, you'll need to buy an external power bank and a proper cable, which adds a bit of extra cost and cable management. Who should definitely consider this camera? If you're a hobbyist who wants to step up from a webcam to a true PTZ system without diving into a full broadcast rig, this is an excellent entry point. The 20 optical zoom gives you the freedom to experiment with framing and the 4K resolution.